So if you win a majority of seats, which you could win with a vote share way below 50%, you will immediately open negotiations with the new Westminster government. That's delusional, isn't it?
Of course not. What we are seeking to do is put into place the democratic views of the people of Scotland. Now, if we win an election and a majority of seats, we'll say to the UK Parliament what we want is an independence referendum. Now, I have no doubt that Keir Starmer, the likely new Prime Minister, will say no to that. So what we've done at conference is put much more meat on the bones and said, OK, well, if that's the case, why don't we transfer that power to Holyrood? But along with that, why don't we look at some of the key powers to resolve the cost of living crisis? So powers over energy, over migration, over single market, to change the way in which we respond to the cost of living crisis in a manner which protects people of Scotland.
Mr Yousaf mentioned today the educational the educational attainment gap. He said it's seen its biggest reduction since records began. He was referencing primary school children. What about the fact that wealthier children sitting their Nat 5s this year were almost twice as likely to achieve an A than kids from state schools?
So, of course, we're trying to close the attainment gap, which is why a significant amount of money has been put into both primary and secondary schools.
Well, it is. It's a lot of money. It's nearly £1.5 billion.
But what we know is that 95% of Scotland's young people go to positive destinations. That means that 95% of Scotland's young people go to universities, they go to college, they go to apprenticeships, or they go direct to work, which I think is a very positive thing.
You've put £1.4 billion of Scottish taxpayers' money in. Children in state schools are now 0.6% more likely to get a pass at Nat 5.
And as I've just outlined, what we know through Scotland's education system, world-class education system, is that 95% of our young people go to positive destinations.
Right, you're ignoring the point I'm making.
No, I'm addressing your point directly, because what we know is...
How come children in state schools are only 0.6% more likely to get a pass at Nat 5, despite putting £1.5 billion quid in?
The purpose of going to school is to ensure that people go to positive destinations, that they go to university, they go to college, they go to apprenticeships, or they go directly to the workplace, so they're able to contribute directly back into the economy. So I think it's a positive thing.
Are you saying the education attainment gap doesn't matter anymore because they're all going on to what you call positive destinations?
Not at all. We know that we have an education attainment gap in Scotland, and what we're seeking to do is to put money into it to narrow that. Now, that's
what I'm saying. It's not really working.
But that's a long-term thing, as I'm sure we all understand.
But for how long?
But the key thing here is the fact that Scotland's young people are going on to positive destinations. I'm very proud of that.
In 4 years, from 2019 to 2023, you've managed to increase the number of Nat 5 students in state schools achieving a pass by that tiny amount. Are you actually saying that that is an achievement?
No, what I'm saying, what I'm outlining is that what we know in Scotland is that our young people go on to achieve great things, and you know that potential of our young people.
Like despite the education they've had in state schools in Scotland.
So what I'm saying is that our young people are our future, and it's hopefully the case that those young people will be able to contribute back into society. And if we know that 95% are going to those positive destinations, that's surely a good thing.
Mr Yousaf also today promised to freeze council tax next year. Are you going to make up the shortfall for authorities?
Well, firstly, I think what this does is it recognises the fact that families are really squeezed at the moment by the Westminster-made cost of living crisis.
And so are councils.
We know that energy bills are high because of failed energy policy at Westminster. We know that mortgages are high because of a failed Prime Minister at Westminster. We know that food prices are high because of Brexit. What we are doing with the limited powers we have under devolution, the limited tax-raising powers, the fact that we essentially operate off a fixed budget determined by a Tory Prime Minister, is to protect people through that council tax freeze.
And
I think that will be warmly welcomed by households right across Scotland.
My question was, are you going to make up the shortfall? Because they're already stretched to provide those services.
I'm sure that the Scottish Government will be in discussion with local authorities and around how this is implemented. This is, of course, not a new thing.
Are they going to make up the shortfall?
This, of course, is not a new thing in Scotland. We previously had a council tax freeze, which was fully funded at that moment in time. Now, I'm sure that the Scottish Government will...
Are you going to make up the shortfall?
I am sure the Scottish Government will be in discussions with local authorities to ensure that they are best protected as possible. What we need to make sure is that we're protecting households in Scotland who are being absolutely hammered by the cost of living crisis, a cost of living crisis made in London. Now, if we weren't doing a council tax freeze, we'd be similarly criticised by our opponents. What we're doing is we're standing up for the people of Scotland where it matters most, and that's in their pockets.
Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, Stephen Flynn. Thank you.